I want to get into where the upsets may be at. And you know how we do this here on this show, if you've tuned in for any length of time. When we talk about upsets, we're not trying to make our prediction on the money and call that we got Colorado beating TCU or whatever it ends up being, even though that did happen, and we did not put it at a percent chance that was above 30. So that's on us. When it comes to the upsets this coming weekend, though, where should we be looking? Who's on the upset alert? Who's on the radar, if you will? Got a couple of games for you. And the first of which being, I wasn't even sure if we should put it on the upset alert radar, because you look at the spread and Notre Dame is a 7.5 point favorite, so just around a touchdown against NC State. This would be an upset purely in a perspective of what it would mean for the college football landscape. Notre Dame now flirting with the top 10 ranking. If NC State were to slay Notre Dame, the impact that would send across the college football landscape would be massive. And make no mistake, there is a path here for this to happen. Vegas thinks so as well. Notre Dame yet to play any Power 5 teams. They walk into Raleigh, North Carolina, and that would be the second, I guess, upset, quote unquote, in that state in the last calendar week. Sleepy noon kickoff. You know, we don't know a ton about what NC State's going to be, kind of ho-hum against UConn. Oh, barely got it done, 24-14. I still think Brennan Armstrong is extremely dangerous playing quarterback for them. Very mobile, reunited with his offensive coordinator, Robert Anae, and they made magic at Virginia together and put him into that conversation of him being like a top 5 quarterback going into 2022. Didn't happen that way after Robert Anae left. Don't write off NC State, especially don't write them off at home. If NC State jumps on this thing early, could get very risky. So we'll talk more about Notre Dame a little bit later in this show, but the best defensive player they have faced will be against NC State. It's not saying a ton because, again, the first Power 5 opponent they're playing, but Peyton Wilson is a name that I think a lot of people need to know nationally. He is an absolute dog playing linebacker for them back there. Keep an eye on him and how he impacts that run game for Notre Dame. If NC State kind of sells out to stop the run, we've talked a lot about the receivers at Notre Dame and can they separate? Can they be explosive in the pass game? I think we find out this coming weekend. I think we find out. So we're not picking NC State to upset Notre Dame. And again, upset we use very, very loosely there. I understand the spread doesn't really indicate this being like an upset territory, but optically it would be, the headlines would be, hey, Notre Dame gets upset by NC State on the road, whatever. 41% chance for us of this upset happening based on our very, very specific and calibrated calculations as to what this could mean. Let's go to another one, though, that's a little bit more true to the upset definition in nature, and that's SMU going to Oklahoma. Now, Oklahoma hung 70 points on Arkansas State. They looked great. Defense looked awesome. You saw Jackson Arnold get it in the second half. That was really fun to see. Dylan Gabriel's dealing. He hit the more for the 2.5 total touchdowns. Shout out Prize Picks. SMU, though, man, Preston Stone's playing quarterback for them. Preston Stone could have gone to a lot of different schools. Preston Stone is a Power 5 quarterback at SMU. I know folks that were at SMU previously, they're not there anymore, but people that played with both Tanner Mordecai and Preston Stone. Tanner Mordecai, obviously a Power 5 quarterback now at Wisconsin, was at Oklahoma. Can sling the rock, can Tanner Mordecai. And when he was at SMU, I was told Preston Stone was pushing him as a true freshman. Like, Preston Stone's ability in itself makes this game fascinating. He's a cool customer, man. He is cool like a 7th grader walking out of lids. We've all been there. They're going to score some points against Oklahoma. Rhett Lashley's offense going to dial it up. They are swinging for the fence on the road in Oklahoma. Jordan Hudson, 5-star wide receiver for us here at On 3. He was the number 2 wide receiver in his class, according to us here at On 3. Okay, he transferred from TCU. A lot of schools wanted him when he jumped into the portal. You heard Auburn in the mix. I believe A&M was on the radar for him. Jordan Hudson is a big-time player. So I'm seeing a quarterback. I'm seeing a big-time wide receiver. What do we say about upsets? All it takes is one matchup. You may not have all 11, but if you have 1 out of 10, you can make that one work to your advantage consistently, and that's just the well you keep going back to, especially on the outside where you can kind of isolate a matchup. Keep an eye on this game. I'm expecting this one to be a track meet. I like SMU to potentially cover that 15. I think there's a little bit of a lower chance of upset since it's in Norman and what we saw last week from Oklahoma. I still think that Oklahoma is further along defensively than what we saw last year, but they will get tested in this game. For what it's worth, we put this at a 36% chance of an upset for the Mustangs. Now, this was a team that we're about to talk about here that played upset a little bit last year. You remember week 2, App State goes into College Station, takes down Texas A&M. App State ended up getting game day to come to campus. Like, that was huge, right? App State goes to North Carolina this coming Saturday. The spread is North Carolina minus 18.5 for North Carolina. Now, remember, they just played a big-time spot last week against South Carolina. Drake May is dealing. Had a couple interceptions. We'll talk about that, but he's dealing. And that's a pretty emotional win, I would imagine. There was a lot they had to do to get up for that kind of game. Classic letdown spot for the Tar Heels here. Now, I know it's going to be a different team than you saw last year from App State, but remember, App State actually pushed North Carolina to the wire. This was like 63-61 was the final, I believe. North Carolina barely got it done. Different team, different quarterback, all that I understand. I think it'll be a more physical approach than what North Carolina saw last week against South Carolina. I'm just saying, keep an eye on this one. North Carolina cannot turn the ball over like they did last week. Drake May, 2 uncharacteristic interceptions for my money. App State's no stranger to the upset. So keep an eye on this one. I'm not so sure that App State will be able to keep pace with North Carolina. And if we see North Carolina's defensive line look anything like they did against South Carolina and be anywhere close to that number of 9 sacks, well, then this game probably feels a little bit different in that fourth quarter than we're talking about it right now. Go ahead and put that chance of upset for us at 28%. So App State, sneaky, no stranger to upsets, but we do think UNC ultimately has too much firepower. Speaking of no stranger to upsets, how about Eastern Michigan? They go to Minnesota. Minnesota didn't exactly look awesome against Nebraska, right? I mean, they scored 13 points and they took a walk-off field goal to get it done against Nebraska, who turned the ball over 4 times. Now, credit the defense for turning them over, but you understand what I'm saying here. Minnesota, you got it done in week 1, but it wasn't exactly like, yep, that's going to be a dominant ball club the rest of the way. Now, they very well may be, but Chris Creighton, the head coach for Eastern Michigan, does more than just get scholarships to walk-ons. He has beaten multiple Power 5 teams since he's been the head coach there. Now, this is also an interesting stat. It means nothing, but it's worth talking about. A MAC team has beat a Big Ten team every year since 2006. Again, that stat means absolutely nothing going into this game. Minnesota's a 21-point favorite. Just worth noting. Also, PJ Fleck and company, they lost to Bowling Green in 2021. So there's some history there of a little bit of a letdown from Minnesota. They're going to play this game, and those games won't matter. But you understand what I'm saying here. If we're looking at trends, this is an interesting one to circle. We'll put it at 23% chance of the upset for Eastern Michigan. I think Minnesota maybe got a little bit of a wake-up call with how they played against Nebraska. But keep an eye on that one. That's on our radar when it comes to upsets this coming weekend. Now, here's a game that we just have to mention, but it's not an upset by any stretch of the imagination. We got asked a question actually in our live chat yesterday about this game, and I told you we'd talk about it, so we're going to do it right now. Ole Miss, favored by 7 points, hosting, no, they're going to Tulane. Now, the reason why this isn't an upset, Tulane won a New Year's Six Bowl last year against USC. We all saw that. We all saw what they did in that game. Have an extremely capable quarterback in Michael Pratt, who a lot of folks wanted to jump into the transfer portal so they could get him on their football team. Also, Tulane is ranked. Regardless of what you want to say about the AP poll and the coaches poll, like, there's enough consensus out there to say Tulane is a top 25 team in the country. The Nothing But Ball poll doesn't go down to 25 teams. We just keep it in the top 10. But if it did, Tulane would be in our top 25. This is not an upset if Tulane gets this done. We've seen them do it enough times to where they're not just sneaky. Like, this is a real life, big time matchup to a degree where Ole Miss better bring their A game. I mean, I think this game comes down to, quite frankly, how much Ole Miss has to counterpunch. We know they're going to give the ball to Quinshon Judkins. We know he's probably going to get his. But what if Quinshon Judkins isn't as effective as Ole Miss wants him to be when it comes to their game plan on Thursday? What if he isn't necessarily going for like 4 or 5 yards a carry and you find yourself in 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, obvious passing situations? Tulane just sells out to stop the run. Can Jackson Dart get it done? We'll see. That's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Going back to the game, Notre Dame at NC State, similar point spread. NC State has much less proven in my mind with this year's team. New quarterback, new OC, all that. Tulane, we know more about. They're nationally ranked. That one is not on the upset radar. That's just on the good game radar. Notre Dame, NC State, if you want to call it an upset, you can. We're talking about it because I think the impact would be tremendous. So a lot of games on the radar here when it comes to the upset alert meter. This is going to be a good week of college football. It's always the games that they say there's no way there's going to be an upset. We put out this segment last week and had a lot of people reach out to us and say, bro, all those games you mentioned, there's no upsets happening. And we saw Colorado take care of business against TCU. So expect this weekend to be no different. No predictions there, just kind of taking a pulse for what the upsets could look like in week 2 of the beautiful thing that is college football season. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.